Okay, so looks like the next thing on the agenda is to talk about the rest of the financial year, and particularly this Paxton project, which by all accounts has not gone particularly well. So given that you had oversight of that, Ali, do you want to talk about that? And
Well,
let's see where we go.
there's not really that much to talk about, because after all that work that we did to actually get the funding, we've now come around. We're a month away from the end of the financial year, and we haven't spent the money.
All that work, like who did the work? Like who was
Well,
asked to do
the
the
bulk
work?
of it was my work, and I
you
was
serious?
responsible for it. And I've now got to go to the funding body and say, sorry,
Well,
we haven't spent the money. Can
Hang
we
on,
please
Can
have
I just
another year
actually-
to
can I just
spend the
have
money?
you say that again?
It's
Did
just-
you honestly just say the bulk
Let's
of
just
it
hang
was-
on.
Yeah.
Let's hang on for a sec.
Honestly, just-
Let's hang on for a sec. Slow it all down, people, because this is obviously a really big story and a lot's gone on. And I can see you're obviously really frustrated by what's happened, and Paul, you've obviously got a side of the story too. And so when we've got that, it's really important that we listen well. So why don't we try to do a bit of that now? Because there's going to be multiple ways of seeing this, and it is a big project, and
It's really big.
it's not about laying blame. This is about trying to pack what's happened to see what we can learn from it and how we can go forward together. Okay, is that all right?
Yeah.
So maybe if we can just hear each other now. What would be good in this is when you hear the other person's story, if you can just reflect back what you're hearing. Literally, I heard you say X, Y, and Z, yeah, and vice versa. So if you don't get it right, the other person can kind of help you to see what they're seeing. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It seems a bit daggy, but it's actually really helpful to help us to land on the same page. So
Okay.
doesn't matter who starts. Do you want to kick off?
Okay. Well, yeah. We were given the challenge of applying for funding, and we spent a good part of 2 months putting together the research, the findings, the evidence of how we've worked on this before, and we got the funding, which is great, but now we've come around to the end of the year and we haven't actually used the money. We haven't even hardly started the project, and we're back, we're almost at the start. And I'm frustrated because I now have to go to the funding body and say, sorry, we didn't spend the money. Can we have an extension, please?
Okay. What are you hearing Ali say?
She's frustrated. I get that. But, we're all frustrated, but I heard that you said you're frustrated. And it didn't get done. And, I guess that makes you, not look fantastic to the funding bodies. I get that too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But can't you see how that's happened? I mean, and this is what we talked about. So can I say my bit?
Yeah, has he got the guts of what you're saying? Was there anything else there that he didn't get?
Yeah, also the fact that, we've just got such a limited period of time now, and we're going to have to see whether we can still hold on to the money.
Okay.
Does that make sense? Yeah.
Yeah, it's put us in a tricky spot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So when you allocated it to me, we had time, and I felt quite confident about that. And then with the other project that you gave me afterwards, remember I said to you, look, I think this really puts us under the pump too much. When we were looking at the project to do with the national park stuff, and I said, that's great, I can do one or the other, and suddenly, we had to deal with both. And this is months and months ago, right at the start of the financial year. So I feel like I was put on in a spot to only fail. And I don't feel like that was heard, at that time. I feel like there was just no option for me there.
Well, you weren't the only one who didn't have an option.
Maybe just reflect back what you're hearing, and then add some more of what you were saying.
Okay, all right. So what I heard was you were ready and confident in taking on the project, the Paxton project, but then because I'd given you other work as well with the more recent projects come up with national parks, that you had said to me, look, we've got to make a priority here, and that was what we had to work with. And so you don't think it's fair of me that I'm grumpy about the Paxton project not having been seen through.
Yeah, it's actually nice to hear you say that, because I haven't felt heard in that before.
Yeah, okay, fair enough. I get that.
You were starting to say you weren't the only one under the pump. Do you want to say a bit more about that in terms of additional context?
Yeah, I mean, the reality is that, you know, our whole department's been squeezed by senior management in trying to make us take on, you know, these two projects on top of business as usual. So, okay, yeah, I suppose I've got to acknowledge that I've pressed down some of my stress onto you in doing that.
Well, I mean, that's where it's at for me, because I feel like if we'd had a chat like this months ago, I mean, you know the impact this has had on me. You know, it's had a big impact on my life, and I own some of that. I mean, I've had health issues, as you know. So I was unwell a lot, I was pushing myself, and that was part of, you know, how it was for me. And look, I admit I probably should have been more honest, I should have talked about it a bit more, but I've never heard you say that. I've never heard you acknowledge what you just did, and to be honest, it's nice, but I wish I'd heard it earlier.
So it sounds a little bit like you just kind of kept going, even though the thing was starting to become a train wreck, because you didn't feel like there was acknowledgement there.
Job.
You wanted to do a good job?
Wanted to do a good job.
That makes sense to you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Me too.
Yeah. So here we are, we've got the project as it is now, and I guess now it's about working out, what do we do with this? What do you do with it? You're the people in the middle of it, and at least you understand where you've come from. It's far from perfect where you're at, but how could you work on that together?
I'd love to do the Paxton project. You know, I've wanted to do this for years. I'm absolutely, and I'm feeling better and more energetic. I'm ready to do it. I know that we've got to sort out if that's possible, but I'm keen. I just need to be allocated that's what I'm doing, and not, you know, too much else.
Yeah, okay. Or maybe I could talk to senior management to see whether we could get, you know, second another staff member for, you know, like 0.5 of the time to take the pressure off finishing off the National Parks project.
How do you feel that the funding bodies will go, and do you need any support to go back to them in terms of whether the project's ended up behind?
Yeah, it's a bit of a source of stress.
What can we do? Is there anything that can be done to kind of support you in that?
Yeah, look, how about we work together on doing the application for the extension? And that would take the pressure off me a bit.
All right, good on you. Thanks. How do you feel now?
Yeah, feel better actually.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
So you're facilitating a meeting. You see tension between a couple of people. How do you deal with it?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, there's the skills, if you like, involved. One of the biggest things that's the trickiest thing for people to deal with is what's happening to you. When there's tension coming up as a facilitator, the first thing you feel that kind of, what's going on? And when that starts to happen, your ability to facilitate the situation can be limited. So it's really important that you're kind of anchored, you're connected to a centered core within you, and you're able to sit in the heat of the moment. So that's the first thing. That's the kind of the self-awareness piece. And the other part is that when people actually have some level of conflict between them, they kind of hold these positions and they stop hearing each other. So as facilitators, what we want to try and do is open that up so people start hearing each other again, and that reflecting back what you hear the other person saying, even though it can kind of look daggy, it's amazingly powerful, because when the person hears their own words coming out of the other person, they feel like they're being heard by that person, and that's where people come back into the same kind of frequency, if you like. So it's quite transformative, as simple as it is. So naming it and saying, well, okay, something's going on here is a real key, because otherwise people can just get lost in the tension. Yeah.
And one of the things I noticed that you did was you slow things down.
Yes, and of course that's in response to what's happening in the people in the room, which is everything's starting to move faster. As you get triggered and the emotion starts to rise within you, physiologically we're in a fight-flight place, and then we stop hearing each other. Just so by slowing it down, bringing awareness to people that we are speeding up, helps them to go, oh yeah, and they slow down a little bit. As that happens, the ability to hear each other opens up. And so that's when you can start to apply that, that strategy, that process of let's try and hear each other better.